In South Australia, the state premier there, he's gotten on the social media is evil bandwagon. He wants to make it impossible for children aged under 14 to have a social media account. Now, this opens up all sorts of cans of worms. Let's have a listen to what he said, and then we'll discuss the merits of his brilliant idea.
It is my government's objective to ban access to major social media platforms for all children under the age of 14. And then for 14 and 15-year-olds, they should require parental consent before they can get access.
The efficacy.
So I don't think there's any parent who would argue that social media is having a detrimental effect on kids. I think most people would agree with that. And there was a survey done recently in South Australia that mirrors surveys around the world that a majority of people do think that it would be better if young people were not using social media. But to ban children under the age of 14 from using it and require 14 and 15-year-olds to have parental permission, there's a couple of things. Firstly, is that okay to do, or is that anti-free speech and the rights of individuals? Secondly, how do you actually achieve that without instituting some sort of digital ID, which won't just be applied to children trying to access an Instagram or Facebook account, but rather will be used for nefarious purposes for the rest of us?
Yeah, indeed. And we saw what will be really interesting about this inquiry is how because that's what the inquiry is. How do we enforce such a thing? It bears mentioning that Instagram and Facebook, if you're opening an account with them, they require you to be at least 13 years of age. But of course, that doesn't work because kids just lie. We're like, yeah, sure, I'm 13.
Can I just say, if you're 13 and on Facebook, like, what's wrong with you? Your grandmother's on Facebook. just tell kids grandma's on Facebook. They immediately won't want any part of it.
The kids should be on Instagram.
It's how they communicate with their friends and send DMs and photos and all the rest of it. So you already have that in place. It obviously doesn't work. And if the government is to implement a ban, then of course it is going to take some very far-reaching, stringent conditions. And my first thought on this was when in late 2020, the Morrison government did this whole inquiry about online abuse and how can we crack down on it. And one of the recommendations that came back was that people would be required to have a social media passport. And to get one of those, you would have to give these platforms at least 100 points of identification, your passport, your license, whatever. But what an impediment on privacy that is. They then know exactly who you are, where you live, what your political persuasions are. Like these platforms don't already have enough information, which we've learned recently and quite a few times now, especially from Meta. They're more than happy to sell your data. Cambridge Analytica, great doco on Netflix if you want to know how Facebook sold us all out in the 2016 election. But they want that data so they can skew the public sentiment regarding anything, really, because if you have that data, you can turn hearts and minds whichever way you want them to go. But this would require absolutely every single one of us undergoing this in order to prove that we are who we say we are and we are as old as we say we are in order to access our own social media accounts. I always say government always use the most reasonable and rational argument for these kinds of moves. And people go, oh, well, we all want to protect kids online. Absolutely. That is the job of parents. And I am sick and tired of the state stepping in and going, oh, we have a solution to this problem. No, you don't. That should be the jurisdiction of the parents. And you know full well that the only way to implement something like this is going to require a loss of privacy and therefore rights on behalf of everyday citizens across the board.
And I'm not sure it really fixes the issue they're trying to fix anyway, right? So I'm sympathetic to the idea that children probably shouldn't be on social media. It's
Aren't we all?
Brain rot, it's poison. It has proliferated bullying so badly because, of course, once upon a time, you were a kid getting bullied in the schoolyard, but you at least got some respite when you went home and saw mum and dad. Well, you don't even have that anymore because they continue to bully you when you get home via text message or social media or whatever it might be. It is the decision of the parents whether or not their kids are on social media, and they ought to be monitoring that. But you can remove social media from the mix and say, OK, well, that's causing damage, so we've removed social media. But presumably a child who is in a position to be able to have a social media account has access to the internet and a device, whether it be a computer, an iPad, a phone, whatever, right? And there's so much other stuff that they can consume on the internet anyway through so many other means that, oh yeah, so we've removed social media, but it doesn't stop them going on any other website on the internet. And again, that is a decision of the parents to make. They can set up blocks on their internet service at home, and on it goes. It's for the parent to decide. So he's not going to go on Facebook, so he's not going to get bullied. Well, great, they'll find some instant messaging service.
Oh, yeah.
You know, kids aren't dumb. They always find a way around it,
the
right?
online games that kids play these days have a little messaging that you can write to each
Discord
other.
and
Absolutely. So there's still... problem is not solved.
Two more things on this. Firstly, if they found a way to do this in South Australia, how does it work when you've got one state that makes it illegal, but you just go across the border and all of a sudden you've got the internet free? The other thing here is if Peter Ramanauskas is really worried...
What did you call him? Ramanauskas?
Ramanauskas?
Ramanauskas is a football player, isn't he? I think he's an AFL player.
Malanauskas.
Anyway, if the Premier of South Australia is really concerned about the welfare of young people, why did he vote against an inquiry into the treatment of kids with gender dysphoria? If you're really worried about welfare, that'd be an inquiry worth pursuing. Or why did the South Australian government use taxpayer money to bring Sam Smith, of all people, to South Australia to perform in a concert? If you're worried about the influence on young people, why spend taxpayer money on that? So he's ignored those two things, but taken up the social media issue, which makes you a little bit suspicious.
It does look rather virtue signally to me. It's like, we're the first state in Australia who's going to lay the smack down. Yeah, how exactly do you propose to do that? I don't think so.